Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the PRF 2026 webinar on our fellowships. It's exciting to have many of you with us today from all over the country. Before we kick off, I just want to start by acknowledging that I'm meeting you from the lands of the Kaurna people today and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I know we have people joining us from all over the country, so I really welcome you to acknowledge the lands you're joining from today in the chat, if you feel comfortable to. And we will dive straight in. So, today we are going to cover a range of topics. So we're going to start off with an introduction. We're then going to dive into the intent and what to expect from the fellowship, the application information and the timeline. We then are very, very fortunate to have two previous fellows today, Shelley and Kyle, joining us, who are going to share their fellowship experience with us. And then we're going to finish with a Q&A session. You're very welcome to pop your questions in the chat throughout the webinar today, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as we can in the 20 minutes at the end of today's session. Today, I'd also love to welcome my colleagues who are joining from the Paul Ramsay Foundation. We have Laura, we have Tess, who you'll hear from shortly, and we also have Julia behind the scenes, who is making this all possible today. So we have been working to pull together next year's fellowship, and we are really excited to see so much interest so far. So the word fellowship is a bit of an interesting one, and I just wanted to say something about this because it struck me when I started. Often the word fellowship has been tied to kind of more of an academic space, universities, etc. But we've tried really hard to push this fellowship opportunity out to all sorts of corners and reach all sorts of diverse people, knowledge, experience, etc. This is not just sitting down and having to feeling the sense to write huge, long books or academic papers, although that may be what you want to do and you're welcome to. I guess what we're really interested in is big ideas and big ideas that can be brought to life. It is a significant commitment, and Tess will go through that with you afterwards. But it's a brilliant opportunity. So for us at the Paul Ramsay Foundation, we are really sort of united in a clear vision to work towards a future where people and places have everything they need to thrive. With organisations and communities and the institutions that I'm sure many of you are part of, we invest in, we build and we influence the conditions needed to stop cycles of disadvantage across Australia. So on our next slide, you will see we have three strategic pillars, and this has come through in the guidelines and application process that you would have, I'm sure, all read by now. So the first one that we look at is around First Nations people and communities are self-determining. The second is that places and communities are connected and imagining and leading their own futures. And the third is children and young people have positive life paths free from entrenched poverty and harm. So what we're really looking to do is to align our fellowships towards helping to progress our strategy and progress our ambition to stop cycles of disadvantage across Australia. Please, as I said before, feel free to pop as many questions in the chat as you like. If you're on a phone today and can't get your questions through, you can always reach out via the email. But now I'm going to hand over to Tess, who is going to dive into some of the detail and give you, I guess, what you've come for today, more of an explanation about where this has come from and what we're hoping to see in our fellowship program. Over to you, Tess.
Thank you, Carolyn. So hello, everyone. Really excited to see so many people joining us today. I thought I'd start with a bit of a why are we doing the PRF Fellowship Program and what are we hoping to achieve? And really the intent behind this is that we believe that if we can find passionate, driven people with promising ideas who are seeding new and innovative territory, and if we give them the time, space, resources, and this collective experience through a fellowship cohort, that we'll be able to build this community of influencers and leaders from diverse backgrounds, and that this will enable a network across Australia who are all collectively amplifying social change. So that's really the intent for the program, as a real summary. And then this is also part of, so as part of PRF strategy, as Carol had said, we really think that building connections and capability for leaders is key to this. So the fellowship program sits within our focus on leadership, and really we want to enable the conditions that help people to thrive, and that we can do this through collaboration and hopefully moving to enduring systems change. Next slide, please, Jules. And just to give a bit of history and context of fellowships at PRF. So we have been awarding fellowships since 2020, and in 2024, we moved to a revised program, which involved an open call for applications, because we really wanted to seek this greater diversity of people, of experience, of ideas. We also moved to a cohort model, so moving from a more individually focused kind of program to this collective experience and people coming together to share knowledge during their fellowship. It also involved forming an alumni network. So we really want to make sure that we can create these connections and scale the impact of the work that's happening and enrich the work both kind of within the program as well as beyond that. So PRF has supported 11 fellows to date, and 6 under the kind of original model and 5 of our latest 2024 PRF fellows as well. And as you'll see from this slide, our fellows have kind of explored questions and progressed thinking in a range of areas. And this is from kind of how to scale early years mental health prevention in rural areas, and how to disrupt concentrations of disadvantage in schools, right through to how to better use data and AI for education and economic development, how to build the capability of others to do the work that's needed to address some of our most complex challenges. So that's not to say you need to be limited by these. This is just a selection of the ideas that we have supported in the past and some of the groupings and connections that we start to see forming between our fellows. So next slide, please. And so in terms of what a PRF fellowship offers, it offers you the time and funding and support to explore opportunities for change. It offers regular opportunities to get together with your cohort, to share kind of challenges and progress, test ideas, seek feedback. And it offers investment in your own personal development. This is not just about the ideas, but actually what we want to do is back great people and help to develop you as leaders in this space as well, if not already. And it also, as I said, it offers this community of thought leaders and a platform for influence. So as I said, in terms of the financial support, PRF fellowships are up to 250,000. 220,000 of that is to support the work. That might be to support your own time investment. It might be to support other collaborators that you're working with, and things like travel to do visits to places you need to be, to support workshops, any of these kinds of things. It's fairly flexible, and we're very open to discussion about how the funding is used to best achieve what you're trying to do. But in saying that, we also recognise that we want to support the people. So there is also this kind of up to 30,000 that we will work with you on to develop a bespoke training and or capability plan for yourself. And this can be throughout the program. We'll look at what support, if any, you need and how we can help to develop and support you. And you'll also have access to a mentor throughout this time as well. And then really what we're asking as well is that the work that you do over this 18 months will be kind of come together in some kind of output, whatever that may be. As Carolyn said, it doesn't need to be a long, lengthy report. We would love to see other options for what that might be. And we recognise as well that we're looking for both research and practice ideas. So there might be some practical change as well from the work that you've been doing. But the idea would be that at the end, we would work with you to publish and share for broader kind of public benefit, the results, the learnings, the findings of your work, with the idea that this can increase the discussion and uptake of these kinds of opportunities that can have positive generational impact. Next slide, please. And to give you a sense of what you can expect from the program as well. So PRF Fellows will participate in a number of touch points across their fellowship. And these serve as kind of regular opportunities to connect and learn with each other and with the PRF team. We will support you throughout this from the beginning, where we'll introduce you to relevant colleagues, help make connections if there are ones that we can draw for you, and really just set you up to have a great start to your fellowship and to any support that you may need. And this goes right through to the end, where we will support you with the communication and dissemination of your outputs. And there'll be, as I said, these touch points in between, either online or in person, but we really like to come together in person to keep that momentum and those relationships. And I think perhaps some of our fellows who are on the call today will talk about the retreat and what a highlight that was. So the ability to spend some real time together over a number of days in a community and doing that work, having those discussions together. So it's a really interactive and engaging process, obviously still giving plenty of space for you to do the work that you need to do. And I think on to the next slide, please. And this brings us to kind of a bit about, as I said, the applications, eligibility, what we're looking for, and a bit around the timeline and what we're working to here. Apologies, light's gone off. So yeah, we're looking for passionate people with innovative research and practice ideas that can contribute to PRF's purpose of helping to break cycles of disadvantage in Australia. We want to align that to our outcomes for children and young people, places and communities, and First Nations people. And we really are looking for kind of pioneering ideas that are yet to be explored in the same way in Australia, and that have potential to fill knowledge gaps and create meaningful change. We're looking for this diversity of experience, so whether that's lived experience, professional experience, academic experience, and we are looking for those who can commit to the 18 months and to working with their fellowship cohort to progress this together. In terms of the eligibility, we're looking for people who are over 18 in Australia who are going to conduct the research for the benefit of Australian communities. Fellows will need to be hosted by a not-for-profit or charity organisation. If you don't have a host organisation identified, that's absolutely fine. Please still apply, and we will help to try and match you with an appropriate host organisation who can support the work that you're doing. And just to say as well, some of the things that we've been, or some of the eligibility in terms of what isn't eligible, what fellowships aren't for. So fellowships aren't for delivery of an existing program or service. We're really looking for those new ideas, and they're not for ideas that have already been well tested or developed. We also don't support, or we won't be, don't support medical research as a focus for fellowships. That's not part of our priority. And so you'll also see, and we've published in the guidelines, the selection criteria so that you know what we'll be looking for. And this really is around kind of alignment to our purpose and strategy, the strength of your kind of approach and methodology. And here we're really looking for the thoughtfulness involved in it, and how you kind of are thinking about this. Obviously, we're looking for that degree, the degree of innovation. We really want to kind of be pushing the boundaries, challenging different ways of thinking about things. So that's also really important to the fellowship program. And we're also looking for the potential for systems impact. So we know that often this work will have kind of more immediate benefits for kind of communities and places, and potential national implications for Australia. And we're looking also for what does that mean for the systems that hold disadvantage in place, and how can we shift some of those. And then we're looking at the strength of yourself as a candidate and the experience you bring. And so that will be how we'll be assessing and looking at each of the applications. Our applications, as I'm sure people know, are open now, and they will close at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, the 19th of November. We will be having interviews in the first 2 weeks of December, and we're going to endeavour to advise the successful fellows before Christmas. Again, slightly depending on the number of applications we receive, but that's what we're really working to if we can. And then the program itself will start in March 2026 and run for the 18 months from there. I think that is enough from me. Next slide, please. I'm sure you'll all want to hear more about what a PRF Fellowship is actually like from those who've experienced it. So I'm really pleased that we have Kyle and Shelley here with us today. Shelley, perhaps I will throw to you first. Can you just give us a brief description of what you explored as part of your fellowship, and then kind of tell us a little bit about what your experience was of being a fellow and what was kind of most personally valuable to you?
Thanks very much, Tess, and welcome to everyone. And it's fantastic that there's so much interest in the fellowship program, I have to say, because it was such a wonderful experience for all of the fellows, as Kyle will attest. My project really came out of, I'd been teaching systems change for about nearly 10 years. And I'd also been working in some projects around employment education and training, trying to do sort of systemic work, better implementation of pathways for especially young people in relation to employment education and training. And so the question that I set out to explore and was, how could we build the capability across the government and the human service system for better implementation of employment education and training systems change? So how could we possibly train people to be more effective in doing that work? And I set out to do that by walking alongside a particular initiative that was intended as a systems change initiative called the Tasmanian Youth Job Strategy, but also to really have a deep dive into what are some of the effective ways of doing that work. So that's what I set out to do. And I set out to do it, and I noted that there were some comments flying by as we were, as Tess and others were presenting, set out to do it together as myself as the PRF fellow, but also to work with others very closely in doing that. And so to that end, I employed some people to work with me on some of the work, and including a long-standing colleague, Shelley James, who really worked with me to do that work. In terms of the experience of the fellowship, it just felt like, I have to say, the most wonderful gift to be given, to be able to do a really deep dive into the that area where I'd been exploring a bit for a long time, but just didn't have enough time and space, and to really explore something very deeply. And the other thing that it felt like a tremendous opportunity was to actually work alongside other fellows and PRF itself. As many of you will know, PRF is very involved in systems change in varying ways, also working in communities and also working with children and young people, which you can see in the priority areas for this year. And the opportunity to work with the fellows and to work with PRF and be connected to others across the country who are doing similar work was just truly fantastic. I guess the other thing that's a standout for me about the fellowship is just how flexible and open the PRF team are in relation to it. As I went along in the fellowship, some of the methods changed or evolved, and what I discovered is PRF are incredibly flexible and open to kind of walking alongside me and Shelley as we thought about how best to implement the fellowship and to realise its ambition and goals. And that included, in the end, the final deliverable, which we really negotiated around, well, what would be the best thing that we could possibly deliver? And it was slightly different from where we started out the journey, but to our mind was going to be much more impactful than what we thought of in the beginning of the fellowship. Anything else, Tess, you'd like to ask? Or?
Well, I might throw to Kyle now, Shelley, but thank you. Welcome, Kyle. Could I ask you to do the same thing, please? Tell us a little bit about what you were seeking to do with your fellowship. And again, any thoughts on your experience as a fellow or what you found most valuable?
Thanks, Tess. Thanks, Shelley. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm joining from Wurundjeri country here in Melbourne. I'll talk about my research, but I really want to deliver it in a way about how I came up with my question, so to help people on this call. I looked at the future impact of AI on First Nations communities. It was a question sitting in the back of my mind for a number of years, and I wanted to look at the opportunities and risks, and it was a great privilege. I love PRF. If you're lucky enough to get one of the fellowships, so I guarantee you'll have a great experience. And there's a lot of very clever people there who can help make your work even better. So I'll just rewind a bit, and I want to hopefully it demonstrates how I've got two interests, AI and First Nations communities, how they came to collide and came up with, I think was a reasonably original question, and that's what I think stood out to PRF. And so maybe if you've got two interests that you could somehow see if they can come together to form something original and spicy that will get the attention of PRF, I think that's might be a good way to come up with your question. So my background's in epidemiology. I'm a Wiradjuri man, originally from Dubbo, and my whole career was in academia. I'm an epidemiologist. I study diseases and ended up doing PhD at the University of Oxford, and I was going to be an academic, and then I got the startup bug, and I ended up starting an AI company and raised millions of dollars in venture capital. And I think it's a good case for AI for good. What we did is, I'll grab my phone. we developed an app in 2018-19, an algorithm that was world first, where you could scan photos of your teeth and gums, and you'd get a free dental checkup at home. We had hundreds of thousands of downloads all around the world. But I still remembered my career in First Nations public health while doing this AI startup for 5 years. And I knew AI was coming in a big way. And historically, Indigenous peoples are the last to benefit from new technologies, new medicines. And I was like, okay, what's the impact going to be on First Nations communities? And then I heard about this fellowship. And I was like, they wouldn't be crazy enough to let me work on this for 12 months. I posed the question to them. My methodology, I'd say, wasn't strong, but that's where PRF really came in. I sort of had the diamond approach, divergent thinking in the first few months, really exploratory, and talking with Bertie, Tess. We sort of came up with a framework, and I wanted to look at the future impact of AI against each of the Close the Gap 17 targets. And that really gave the whole piece of work structure, a framework, and it was much easier after that. But that was really through the help of PRF. Anyway, that's a long ramble. I hope that, Tess, is what you're after.
No, that's great, Kyle. Thank you. And kind of one other question for you, Shelley. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how the fellowship helped progress the work that you're trying to do and the change that you're seeking. So we kind of spoke about the personal and what it meant to you. How did it help your work?
So Tess, what it enabled me to do was really to have a deep dive into practice in Tassie. And I've been working in Tassie for 7 years and very passionate about, really making a difference to especially the employment, education and training pathways of young people so that they can realise their goals and ambitions. And so it supported me to walk alongside the Tasmanian government actually and work really sleeves rolled up with a lot of policymakers, but also some of the community sector as well. And to learn with people actually about, how do you do this work? How do you do it impactfully? How do you make a difference? How do you actually learn just to be in my kind of role to be helpful to other people? And so what it's supported is work really from the level of the Minister for Jobs and Skills right down into the community level in Tasmania. And everything in between, and walking with people and really trying to learn together, how do you do the policy work? How do you design effective programs in the space? How do you do beautiful practice so that it's really going to make a difference? How do you listen and support young people to be in all phases of the work? So the deep dive in that way. But at the same time, I was always really interested in how do you take the learning from that deep sort of walking alongside, how do you take that learning and shape it into something that is going to be a good approach for doing this kind of work? And I'm particularly interested in this policy down to practice or policy to place kind of work. And so it enabled us to develop a kind of framework for the work, but also a case study that talks about how we've done the work, because we've really struggled to find in-depth case studies. And then also to make available resources and tools about how you do this work, how do you do good governance, good stewardship, good practice, good service design, community level work. And so that's one of the ways that we're really trying to be impactful in the work. Apart from impactful in the actual work in Tassie, we're trying to be impactful in the work of how do you go about building capability and for others to do it as well.
That's brilliant, Shelley. Thank you. And we have loved seeing both the immediate impact of the work that you're doing in Tasmania, as well as you say, the resources and the case studies you're building to be shared more broadly. Thank you. Kyle, would you like to add anything to that as well in terms of how the fellowship helped progress your work and thinking in this space? Anything you learned in particular that you want to share?
I finished by identifying 3 groups of where the opportunities and risks lied. There was clear areas where we should be accelerating, such as in telehealth, education, linguistics, environment. I've got a few examples here. I'm just going to press enter into the chat of where AI has been co-designed. There is clear Indigenous data sovereignty of these projects. It's co-led. The benefits are shared. These are 3 examples of First Nations AI projects currently happening, and they're doing it properly. So if anyone in the chat, hopefully that worked. Did that go through? Yeah, okay, people are loving it, great. That was really exciting to see that there are examples of where it's being done properly, and we've got examples we can look up to. And then there was a group in the middle where it was around employment and government, where it was a bit murky. So there's more to pause and perhaps evaluate. Like it's less clear, it's a bit murky in the middle, but still promising. And then there were clear examples of where we stop. So there was accelerate, pause, stop right now. And those were around predictive policing trained on biased algorithms. Child protection was a big no-no, where you might automate systems, add surveillance, or keep the waters get quite murky, and housing applications, community housing applications get automated. We've seen really bad examples where AI has done harm in visa processing. Australian government's employed that. Obviously, robo-debt's another example. So yeah, I ended up finishing with 3 clear areas that I wasn't sure was going to come out of the work, but it was good to see that it came through at the end. Does that answer your question, Tess? I never know if I answered your questions.
Thank you, Carl. Keep an eye out for Carl's report, which will be coming soon. There's some excellent insights in there. And I guess one final question. Sorry, lights. One final question for you both. Are there any, or is there any advice that you would give to those considering applying to be a PRF Fellow?
Go for it, Carl. I think to think carefully about your project and what really, as Kyle was saying, he had 2 areas of interest and I had multiple areas of interest, and just trying to make those converge into something really innovative, I think is really important. To think through really carefully how you might do that. But all the while, so to getting a kind of distilled project, all the while knowing that on the other side of that, if you get the fellowship, you'll have freedom. But I do think it's important to think through that stuff. Just the one other thought. As I saw the questions coming through, I was based at a university. So people can be based at universities, and I was based there for a reason, because I really...
Oh no, we may have lost Shelley.
You want me to jump in? Or,
yeah, that would be great, Carl, until...
I've switched to my phone as well. Oh no, we've lost Shelley.
What is your advice to everyone on the call?
I expect there's a lot of very smart people on the call. I'd be ambitious. Don't stress too much about the methodology. Show that thoughtfulness that Tess and Bertie were talking about. But be really ambitious with your question. Try to be original. Don't be afraid to be a bit spicy with the question. Not controversial. And something that I hadn't really thought through. It was just something I really wanted to work on for a year. Diving into this question I had, and now with the support of PRF, we are trying to think about ways we can get this out into the world to influence policy, educate people, raise awareness. And so I hadn't even really thought about that early on. But again, PRF have stepped up. I'm getting media training next week. They really want to have help you have an impact with your work. So I guess just be ambitious, be original with the question.
That's great. Thank you, Kyle. As you say, we love the spicy questions. Thank you both. I think it's probably time to go to some questions, and we will see who's best placed to answer. So, Laura, I might pass to you to let us know what's coming through.
Thanks, Tess, and thanks so much, Kyle and Shelley, for your wisdom and sharing your experience. We really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for all of the questions. I will just preface this by saying we're not going to be able to answer them all in these next 20 or so minutes. But what we will do is release, kind of when we release the recording of the webinar, we'll also do a bit of a Q&A so that we can bunch these questions together and answer them so that others who have the same question can understand and hear our response as well. So I'm going to first start with a bit more of the application logistics, and I'll pass to Tess for this one. But there's a couple of questions related to how many fellows will be part of the cohort, how many will go to interview, and what kind of application volume are we expecting?
So very good questions. In terms of volume, it's really hard for us to know at the moment, but given the numbers on this webinar, we feel very excited about all the great ideas and the great people that are here, but we are expecting it to be in the hundreds. We will award 5 fellowships, and that's to say there could be co-fellowships. So if 2 people want to apply for 1 fellowship, that is absolutely an option, and we welcome that exciting approach as well. So not necessarily 5 people, but 5 fellowships, and then we will see how many people make that group up. And apologies, but I've forgotten the final part of that question.
I think you answered all of it.
Oh, covered it all.
And in terms of the fellowship itself, we've had a couple of questions around the host organisations. Shelley graciously answered the one about universities, so yes, unis can apply. But a little bit more detail around kind of what the obligations of the host organisation are. And there's a couple of questions that centre around do you need to apply through your host organisation or and kind of get their consent and approval and go through them, or is it just you apply with the host organisation? Noted.
Our advice is that if you have a relationship with a host organisation already who really aligns to the work that you want to do, we would suggest you have a conversation with them first, but that's certainly not required. As I said, some people won't have a host organisation lined up, so we'll look to have those conversations with the successful fellows and their host organisations in the early new year and have those conversations. But really the obligations of the host organisation, so for Paul Ramsay Foundation, we can't grant to individuals. We need to grant to not-for-profits and charities who align to our purpose. So we would be this is our way to be able to support individual people by having host organisations. So really our ask of them is to receive the funding from PRF and kind of flow that on to the fellow at appropriate times that are agreed between the fellow and the host organisation. So to be honest, obligations are low. It really is, it's a place to receive the funding. If there's alignment, then that's great. They might also be able to provide, again, support and connections. So that is wonderful. We would love to see that. But really, it is about receiving the funding and helping manage the kind of the legal and financial obligations that come with that.
And I can see a couple of additional questions on host organisations coming through. One is about, can government or government bodies be a host organisation, and does the organisation have to be DGR? Does it have to have DGR status?
No, organisations do not need to have DGR status. And unfortunately, no, it can't be a government body that acts as that host organisation.
And so our, I guess, line for host organisations is AC&C registered. So governments aren't eligible for AC&C registration. So use that as a bit of a litmus test when you are thinking about that host organisation. Are they registered on AC&C? And a couple more host organisation questions, and then I'll move us along. But one is, can you be an employee of the host organisation?
Yes, absolutely. And it's something we have seen and we may expect. I think it's wonderful if you can take some time to step away from your day job for an organisation that you feel really passionately about and be able to do that fellowship. So you can absolutely be an employee of the host organisation.
Lovely. I'll now move to kind of the idea topics and the questions surrounding that. A couple of people are seeking a little bit more of an understanding of what you mean by, or what we mean by, new ideas and program delivery, and a bit more understanding as to why we're excluding existing programs. So just feel free to talk a little bit about that, Tess.
Yeah, so absolutely understand that existing programs that are out in the world, there is a need for funding for those. That just isn't the focus of the PRF Fellowship. So as I said, we're looking for what are the things that are going to push us further into new territory? What are the next horizon type things that we should be thinking about that we're potentially not currently? Or it might be that you are already doing some work and a new question has emerged from that for you. You've thought about it in a different way, and there's kind of like a new part to the work or a new part to the thinking, and you want to explore that more. So it doesn't have to be entirely new. We know that nothing is ever really entirely new. It always builds on things that we have learned and discovered before. So, but we are looking for the kind of, the pioneering new ways, or what hasn't been explored in Australia to the extent and in the way that you would like to do that. That is kind of how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Tess. And we'll continue to provide that answer in what we share as well in the kind of Q&A bit that we'll share with this. I will move us on to a little bit more about, sorry, there's many questions and I really appreciate the enthusiasm. Use of funds. So a couple of people have asked, 250K is a lot of money. How can people use that? Someone asked, and this might be a question for Shelley or Kyle as well as Tess, maybe after you've answered first, Tess. How do people typically use that money, and can you ask for less?
Yes, absolutely. You can ask for less. We do want to make sure that you're supported in the best possible way, and especially where you're having collaborative projects and relying on the time and generosity of other people, whether that's community that you're working with or other colleagues that you want to kind of call on for a bit of support and advice as well. So we want to make sure that all of those contributions are recognised and supported with some financial support. In terms of how you can use the funding beyond that, as we said, we want to back great people with great ideas, and therefore we trust you. So those funds can really be used flexibly in the way that you need to do the work that you want to do. There is some guidance in the budget template itself in terms of some of the categories of spend that we might expect to see, and we'll have discussions as well with successful fellows and help to understand that a bit more or help flesh it out. But really, it is flexible use of funding to do what you need to do.
Thanks, Tess. And before I pass to Shelley and Kyle, I might just ask you one more question about kind of the fellowship itself. People are asking about substantial amount of time. What does that look like? Is that full-time, part-time?
So it's certainly not full-time. We understand that people have other commitments in their lives and other things. I think what we would suggest is, as we said, this is a big amount of money with big ambition attached to it. So we would really hope that the level of time that's spent is kind of matched to that. So there's been a range, and I think actually perhaps Shelley and Kyle can both speak to this too, in terms of, I think there will be some time within that kind of 12 to 18 months where it's fairly light touch and there's not, huge amounts of time invested. And there will be other times when you're in the thick of it, when you have a lot of kind of conversations lined up, work to do, and it might be more resource intensive at those times. So we expect it to kind of balance out overall. But yeah, I would call it kind of more on the part-time to whatever's in between part-time and full-time.
Like a 0.8.
Yeah, point
And
6 to 0.8.
I might actually pass that as well to Kyle and Shelley. A couple of questions. So on the more logistic side of the fellowship, how did you decide how you were going to spend the funds of the fellowship, and how much was for your salary versus others, and kind of the work itself? And also, how much time did you spend on it? In a week, I guess.
I might start first, Kyle, and then so I employed one person almost to work as much as me on the fellowship, actually. And I noted that some people were saying, can 2 people apply for the fellowship? And as it turned out, in a way, there were 2 of us working on it at all times. But I also employed someone to do a bit of intense work right at the end on the fellowship deliverable, which was really helpful. I also noticed, just flying past questions about the amount that universities take in terms of their on costs. And actually, I'm really grateful to the University of Tasmania, who really passed on the minimum on costs because they were so invested in advancing the work. So that was a conversation that we had about just really advancing the work in Tassie. So I think there's always room for negotiation in relation to that. And in terms of the amount of time that I spent on it, and Sally, at least full time actually for us, because it ended up being pretty intense. But I know that of the other fellows, and Kyle can speak to his own experience, obviously, but the 3 other fellows were part-time at various points in time, and some sort of kept going with parts of their day job. So it varied among the fellows.
I'll jump in. Mine was like 2 halves. Last year I was full-time. I had a lot of free time to work on this. This year was really tough to find time. And I had to block out a month at the end just to tell everything else to go away. But it fluctuated like that. And I was hosted by the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence, BSL. I love BSL, if anyone knows them. So I don't know about, they didn't take any part of the funds. I did try to find a research assistant. I just didn't find anyone good. So that didn't work, but I was going to budget some for an RA. And I just wanted to do the reading early on for myself. But I think there's a lot of flexibility. It's an incredible privilege.
Thank you both. I will also ask you one more question from the chat, is how did you both distribute or plan to distribute the results? And how do you plan to measure the impact of your work? Which I'm laughing at because I'm the impact person at PRF, so. Either can start.
Go, Shelley. You just keep going first, please.
So for me, the impact of the work sort of operates at 2 levels. One of them is the detailed case study, and that will become public and with a lot of resources hanging off it that will be open source for people. So we think that's really important. And over the next few months, we'll work intensely with PRF and the comms team and PRF to try and look at what that looks like and how we can publish it. At the moment, it's very much in draft form. And then there's the impact in Tassie itself. And of course, that work is done in deep collaboration with a whole lot of other people. But the measure of the work of the walking alongside bit of the work that I've been doing there is really how much of a difference it has had in the implementation of a joined up and aligned strategy that's implemented at the level of policy. So it's got lots of moving parts to that. For example, it's working on careers and work readiness and various other things, how it's lined up at the level of policy and across the government, but also how it's experienced down at the level of community. And as part of the work that we've been doing on the youth job strategies, there is sort of impact and outcomes measures that are measured through that. And so we'll be able to report on that over the next 12 months or so back into to PRF about the impact of the fellowship and to others who are interested.
I want to firstly get the message out about not just where there's potential to cause harm. I don't want to be an alarmist, but where we should be advancing and moving faster, such as in telehealth, education, environmental management. So a lot of raising awareness. I want to get into the media over the next few months. And Laura, I don't really want to talk about, but I've got something else in the works that I don't really want to talk about just yet.
So fair and so fine. And one of the things we really acknowledge at PRF is that fellowships, the impact of it will take a long time. We expect that because we're getting ideas right at their kind of germination stage, we expect impact to happen not just during the fellowship, but to grow over time. And so hopefully as a part of the fellowship and the alumni network, we'll start to kind of track and see that impact over time as well. So we've only got 5 more minutes. I might ask just one more question. There are a couple about kind of the logistical questions, which I will keep to posting after, because it's not often that we have Carl and Shelley in the room. But there's a question about how do you balance the work of the fellowship versus your other interests, and another person has asked a question about, I've got 2 ideas, can I have 2 applications? What are your thoughts on that? I'll start with Shelley because you guys have figured out that order yourselves.
Oh, I'm not a great person to answer a question about balance. I think I never really balanced it, but and because I was really doing this full time, I could really devote myself to this work, and so what it did give was enough time and space to actually think about things in a way that if I was doing multiple other things, I would never have had that capacity to do it. That was just pure and absolute joy. That's what I would say. Kyle?
This year's been pretty chaotic, but I think it's really crucial to have that early period, maybe the first half. I would say you need to be full time on this project at 0.8 at a minimum. Just to so I could see Laura in the background doing this to get the lights going. Yeah, you can be flexible across the fellowship, but I think early on you've got to be full time.
Thank you both. And I will answer a couple of ones that I can answer super quickly. I think a group of 4 academics is probably not going to be eligible. We're going to limit it to co-fellowships. Any more than that, and the cohort design that we've used will kind of lose a little bit of its oomph. And you need to have working rights in Australia. That's a really easy one for me to answer. And you can conduct projects across multiple sites. in Australia. If that's one of our fellows, Jane did research in kind of implementing a early childhood model in regional Australia, and she went to a whole bunch of different places to gather that information and understand the local context. So that is absolutely, you're welcome to do that. Now there's only a couple of minutes left, so I might just leave it there for now. Apologies, we didn't get to probably even 10% of the questions, but we promise we will share a list of FAQs after this. But I might just pass to Carolyn to close us off in these last couple of minutes.
Thanks, team, and special thanks to Shelley and Kyle, a real inspiration. And there have been many questions, I acknowledge, but we are, just to clarify, we'll definitely prepare an FAQ to respond to some more of those and release the recording. I've seen a couple of questions pop up around can people call and discuss sort of one-on-one their particular idea with a PRF staff member? Unfortunately, I don't think we can do that just through sheer volume, but also just in being equitable in the process. So that's the one thing we probably can't dive into, is the details of your idea. But all of the other logistical questions and queries, we will do our best to definitely respond to those and release something as soon as possible. And I guess as a practitioner at heart, the thing I really want to reiterate, I saw a few more comments coming through about, oh, what if it's not a long research report, or what can alternative outputs be? And someone suggested, can it be a public health campaign, etc.? Yes. Like, we really encourage that diversity. What's going to help communicate your idea and what's going to help lead to impact? That's actually the thing we're most interested in, not how long the report is. And so whether that's a public health campaign, that might be a documentary, it might be or a range of different things. It might be an art installation, who knows, but what's actually going to communicate the heart and the sentiment of what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it. Because at the end of the day, what we're most concerned with is impact. And I think the other thing I would just say is, we're not just thinking about the what's. The how is also really important. So your question might be around exploring new ways to achieve something, or new methods to develop, or new ways to engage or work with communities or folks living on the margins. So it's not just the what's, it's also the hows. So we're really looking forward to hearing from many of you. I'm always about go big or go home. There's no idea too big here. And we really are interested in the diversity of ideas, but the diversity of knowledge and background. The whole term fellowship can be a little bit deceiving around that. So please have a go, talk it through with some colleagues or peers, and we're very excited to start receiving your applications. So thank you very much for spending some time on this webinar today. We're really grateful, and we will get something out to you as soon as possible. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.